I'm Gwen Alegre. I'm a relatively newly minted master naturalist. I was part of the cohort from last September. So I'm very proud and happy to be part of this group. I retired a couple of years ago from a full-time career. I was an organizational change manager. You're probably wondering what is that? Basically, what I did is I worked on very, very large, big company projects to help shepherd people through a big change. So I have a lot of experience, background in communications, training, leadership coaching, understanding how people travel through a change or don't travel through a change, which is also very common. But along the way, I've had this lifelong love and passion for the environment, for ecology. I started my college career as a biology major. Couldn't really see myself in a role in biology. This is before I knew anything about field biology. So I switched to business. But I've been involved in sustainability and environmental causes and interests kind of alongside my full-time career. Now that I'm retired, I'm basically taking my life in the direction that maybe I was meant to have, but I'm doing it now. So that's who I am. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So just bear with me while I set this up. Okay. All right. Can folks see my screen?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, good deal. So just a little bit of a different take today. The past couple of years, I've been very involved leading a conservation effort in my neighborhood. And based on what I had learned in a career and also making a lot of mistakes, and with my group of neighbors kind of adjusting as we go, I wanted to share what I have learned so far with this group, hoping that it's relevant to whatever efforts that you're involved in. So this is just quickly the topics. Each of the slides is labeled with these topics, so we don't really have to go over these at this point. So this is kind of framing up my reasoning for really focusing on private homeowners and a privately owned neighborhood. So I think we all recognize that there's been a lot of tremendous effort to conserve wildlife and our natural places in public spaces. So this is parks, preserves, college campuses, municipalities, so on and so forth. Some homeowners have absolutely taken to planting natives and really becoming more aware of their ecosystem on their own properties. And this, to me, very anecdotally, it seems like this is being done 1 yard at a time, which is good. We'll take 1 yard at a time. However, when you think about it, a large majority of land in New York State is privately owned. So the question is how do we engage a community? And I'm suspecting, like a lot of communities, there are individuals in my neighborhood, talk about the neighborhood a little bit more shortly, widely varying backgrounds, diverse experiences. In this neighborhood, we have all ranges of political perspectives. So, it's a big mix that lives in our community. So, I recognize that some of you live in more rural places. Some of you might live in urban areas. Some of you might live in communities or developed neighborhoods. So you probably all think that your place is special, and I'm sure that it is. But there is no place like Craneridge, which is the neighborhood where I live. So it is wooded and natural. It's on 160 acres. I have a map that I'll show you shortly. There's lots of wildlife here, for good and for bad. We are adjacent to a 1,000-acre county park, which is Sprague Brook County Park. A lot of us who live here consider it like our backyard. We walk there, we, snowshoe, hike, bird watch, whatever. What's really unusual about our neighborhood is that most all of our lots are circles. And then the circles generally do not touch each other. And all of the space between the circles is left green, common space. There are larger common owned properties, which we're trying to really focus on conservation initially. We did discover fairly recently that we believe that somewhere along the way, the design of our neighborhood was influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright. I have found one other neighborhood in the country that is similar. It's a community out in California. I don't remember the name, but I have spoken with the board president there. So we've kind of been exchanging information. So people who live here basically love nature, right? May not know a lot about it, but we love where we live. The founders, so the neighborhood was founded in the mid-1960s, a long time ago. They really were visionary thinkers. They, as Frank Lloyd Wright had shared in his design philosophy, they really wanted a community that was truly a part of nature. Oftentimes we get visitors and contractors who come here and say, oh, wow, I wish all neighborhoods look like this. So I am proud. We are a little bit unique. Okay, so this is the general map of our community. In the white box, these lines are not exact. So we're on 160 acres. There are about 170 round lots. Each one is about a half acre, okay? So even though we feel very wooded and we have some privacy, the lots are really not all that big. Most all of the homes are year-round homes. There are about 500 people who live here, and that's just a rough estimate. For folks who are familiar with Western New York, we are right across the street from Kissing Bridge, right across 240. So yes, we have skiers here. And we are an HOA, and that would be a whole nother conversation, but here it's been working okay for us. Okay, I am not going to go into a lot of detail here. In 2021, we did have our Region 9 DEC Forester come and spend a lot of time in our community. And as they do, he created a forest stewardship plan. Basically, our forest, our woodlands are doing okay, right? Currently in good health. We have pretty good diversity here, but there is a caveat. A very high proportion of what is in our neighborhood are Eastern Hemlock and American Beech. So you're probably already thinking, okay, there's potentially some problems coming in the future. We also did here, and this was based on our objectives, there is opportunity here for reforestation. It's going to be a big project for us in 2023. Trails, native plantings, so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a very diverse community, but there are opportunities for education, which we started to do. We also have a headwater stream called Rump Brook. I don't know why it's a brook, but it flows throughout the neighborhood. Okay, so the challenges that we face are really no different than many of the other woodland habitats in the Northeast, in the Mid-Atlantic. We know that we need to plant a higher diversity of native trees. Like a lot of places, deer population here is excessive. I don't think excessive is too strong of a word. The other thing I'll just mention here quickly is currently in the HOA bylaws, there is a restriction against fencing. So that's something that we are tackling. Invasive insects and plants, same. We also have, so we have beech bark disease here. We also have beech leaf disease. But what's been happening to the beech, which we already had a lot of, because the beech trees are being stressed by the disease, there is so much root suckering. Baby beeches are coming up to the point where they are interfering with other native plants. Of course, hemlock woolly adelgid, and then also we have had some significant erosion impacting our creek and also a couple of homes. So, okay, so how do we get started? Well, as I mentioned, I had retired in September 2020 in the midst of a pandemic, no less. And I knew that I wanted to keep busy in my retirement. And I was looking for a project that reflected my personal vision. And I hope you already get a sense of what, what that is. And then I discovered that there were some other people in the neighborhood who shared the same vision. I'm like, you're my new friends. So we started just a group of 3 of us met. There absolutely was wine involved. And this was in October 2020, so this happened pretty quickly. And what we ended up doing was adopting what had been known as the Craneridge Woodlands Committee. And their sole purpose for over 50 years was to approve cutting down dead trees or trees that, were high risk or risk of doing some sort of damage to property. So we said, hey, there's so much opportunity and so much need. Let's try to expand what the Woodlands Committee does. So we really pretty quickly shifted our focus to habitat management. Okay, So we knew really early on that this was going to be a really big effort. So we planned. In my career, I've done a lot of strategic planning. I know strategy must sound really scary to people. They're like, oh, I don't want to do strategy. It sounds like a lot of numbers or something. It's really not. It's just a facilitated way to have a discussion about who you are, what you envision for the future, and what are the things you want to do to get there. So we did the standard, the standard planning stuff. And I'll share these with you very shortly. Also, we worked with the HOA board very much from the beginning. In fact, at the time, the president of the board was on our committee, which was very handy. So we did not have to do battle. The other good news is that we're not like a typical suburban neighborhood. So we don't have the landscaping pressures that a lot of neighborhoods have. So I just want to acknowledge that we get off easy in that regard. And then we started having conversations with neighbors. We started communicating and meeting with people and got the ball rolling. So I'm not going to read these to you. I will make this available, Christy, if it's okay with you, as a PDF, so you can have this information handy. But from the very beginning, the group of us, by the way, we had, I think at this point, had grown to like 5 or 6 people on the committee. But we were pretty unified in what we wanted to do and what we envisioned for the neighborhood long term. And we created a logo. Okay. And then out of that thinking, we developed long-term goals. And again, this is just kind of the background information for you guys. Number one is we wanted to build community awareness through education. Hands down was number one. So what I learned interacting with my neighbors is a majority of people who live here cannot identify the trees on their own property. They did not know what invasive species were. They were feeding their deer. So it was really starting at a baseline level, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We also wanted to implement the woodland stewardship plan. We knew that we would need help from lots of neighbors. And we really wanted to focus on natives. We have been really focusing on the value of native plantings, not only on common property, but really encouraging native species on private property. So why that's important, what's the benefit to our natural neighborhood? We also knew that somewhere along the way, we needed to focus on improving the stream health. Okay, so these are the lessons learned. And again, we're basically now just started our 3rd year. So the committee, we are still learning as we go. When we first started, it was like, we have no idea what we're doing. So this should be lessons learning. But there are 6 that I wanted to share with you this evening. So, I don't need to go into detail right here, but these are the 6. Okay, so the first one is focus on where there is energy. So if you belong to any community, whether it's in a rural area or an urban setting, you either know of or probably can connect with groups of people who have a lot of energy around conservation, the environment, birds, plants, wildlife. So start with those people. And then also where you start really, really depends. So again, it's go where there is energy. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, what we did, and then just go from there. Pilots are perfect at being imperfect. So that sounds a little odd, but saying that you're doing a pilot is starting small, but also it allows you to say, this is a pilot. You know, we're learning here. We will share what we know. We want your input, but it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. So over the first year, which is when we did a couple of pilots, I said that all the time. We're learning here. In terms of the naysayers, and we absolutely have naysayers here, keep them informed and included, but do not spend a lot of time trying to persuade them. Just, it's easy to do. So conversations with our Woodlands and Habitat Committee, I think naturally people want to convert the naysayers. So there's been a lot of time spent focusing on how we do that. And I'm just saying they'll come along when they're ready, or they may not come along at all. That's okay. Let's focus on people who really care. Also, actions are much more persuasive than words. So saying that you're going to do something, I think this is probably obvious, is nowhere near as impactful as actually having something to show. If naysayers do join, warmly welcome them. Just, you know, for whoever they are, wherever they're at, it's like, you know, we give you the hug. Also, dogs absolutely help. They attract interest, they attract energy. Ron turned out to be absolutely one of our best volunteers. And then Mosley is one of our committee members' dogs. And Ron, you know, one day came and visited Project Day. And, you know, we ended up recruiting Ron because we had a great conversation that day. Okay. Number 2, relationships are key. So I will share that when we first started out, we did a lot of communicating. So we went in the newsletter, we sent emails, we did social media posts, we did all sorts of the normal communication stuff. And we did not get the leverage that we thought that we should have based on interest, or what we thought was interest. So what we found is that it really had to do with one-on-one conversations. So we started to network. So Shannon, the gal in the orange jacket second from the right, was like, okay, Shannon, you're out hiking a lot. You love nature. Who do you know in the neighborhood that might want to join us? So kind of networking that way was more time consuming. Some people had to work outside their comfort zone. But within a relatively short period of time, we built a committee of 9 people plus an additional 25 volunteers. Some of these folks came from our communications, which you have to do if the information is important. We also found that recruiting, posting it on social media, sending emails, nope, it was really having one-on-one face-to-face conversations with people. So, that, I mean, I knew that, but it was just until actually trying to put it in action, it was like, yeah, this is what we need to do. And then also how to bring people together. I mean, use your imagination. It's, host a breakfast, invite people over and serve them dessert. Everybody loves dessert. Wine or beer, always a plus. You can have non-alcoholic beverages as well, but something about wine and beer will get people's attention. I can't imagine why that is. I find that just talking with neighbors on the street, so when we're out doing a project and we're out in the neighborhood, people will stop by and say, wow, what's going on here? What are you doing? We also have t-shirts, which bright green things, so people know that we're involved in our committee when we're out doing project work. So I just want to pause here because I've just covered a lot, just a quick gut check. We'll discuss and have questions at the end, but I just want to make sure you all are still with me. Is everybody okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. This last, this tip at the bottom, give volunteers well-defined roles. I think anyone who's involved in volunteering realizes that we could probably have an hour, 2-hour long discussion just about engaging with volunteers. So I'm not going to go there. One thing I will share with you that we did the second year, because the first year was like, okay, we recruited a bunch of volunteers and we have no idea what we want them to do. I mean, we kind of did, like, come and pull out invasives or dig or, whatever. So the second year, this is just pulled from another slide. We divided our volunteers into 3 different roles. So one is kind of more planning, strategic, really serves in an advocate role. That's the Oaks. Then the Earth people they tend to be people who work full time, but they want to commit a day or maybe 2 days, Saturday during a season. And they're willing to do heavier work, right? And then the growers are basically the people who maintain planted trees, shrubs, perennials. They don't want to do heavy work. And these are people who have a lot more flexibility. This has worked really well for us. And now people are relating. They're, oh, I'm a grower. Oh, I'm an oak. And then at the beginning of last year, we told them when we would need them and what for. And then we just kind of continued to, communicate with them that way. So so far, this has worked out okay. Okay. So the third lesson learned is to partner with experts. So these would be experts who are outside of your community or neighborhood and also inside your community. So this is something where I'm good at. So I'm really good at establishing partnerships and connecting people across organizations. So we have really nice partnerships with DEC, Western New York Prism, Erie County Soil and Water Conservation District, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, maybe not several, but maybe 3 or 4 different environmental educators. Plus, we learned along the way. We have neighbors. We have a lot of educators in the community, a lot of science people. We have civil engineers. We have a guy who's an herborist. He does not work for free, but we do get deals, and project planners. The nice thing about, and this could be, so you're probably aware of a lot of environment ecology related groups in your area. This could be Audubon, this could be Master Naturalist, this could be Prisms, it could be whatever. So these people are like really, really wanting to help. They're interesting, they're smart people, they're also really nice people. So we've leveraged those relationships. And they've also really helped guide our planning and what we focus on. The really great news is that their expertise can be free or very low cost. The other nice thing is that, you know, when speaking with neighbors, we can say, hey, you know, we've got these relationships with these organizations. It really does help build credibility. So one of those educators that we have invited to do programs for us in our neighborhood is Scott Lembitz. Some of you might know Scott. He's an awesome environmental educator. And then also you'll know, this is just a good picture of Scott on the left, but also he was standing in front of a very large bush honeysuckle. So I just wanted to let you know I did recognize that. Okay. This one seems like it's like a no-brainer. But this does really require more thought than you think. So the first year, we just did a bunch of programs. You know, we did tree identification. We did a creek walk with someone from Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. We did, you know, native plants in the garden. Some people were really engaging, interesting, funny. Some of our presenters really knew their subject matter, but were boring, and they talked forever. It was all really interesting because, like, I'm a bio geek person. The other thing is that we learned that first year what people are most interested in. And I'll share with you, and this was kind of like to my dismay, people were interested in gardening. And I'm like, I don't garden. I'm not a gardener. I plant plants. But that's what, I mean, we did a first-time gardening event with Lynn Camara. She's a fabulous master gardener in Western New York, East Aurora. She's also a native plant expert. We had like over 25 people show up. I mean, on a Saturday in like early June. So we thought, okay, people are really interested in gardening. Let's make sure that we focus on the value of native plants. We also had a lot of interest in tree identification. People really did want to know their trees. Most recently, and I'll talk about this in a bit, a lot of energy around hemlock woolly adelgid. I laugh, but when you tell people that a majority of the beloved trees in their neighborhood may die within the next 10 years, you get people's attention. So we've really been learning, and it could be different in your neighborhood, in your area. Who knows what interests people? It's kind of good to find out. So the other thing is that, and I tend to be like, I'm I'm guilty of this as well. Some of our presenters love to talk, and then we ran out of time, and there was really no time at the end, not only just Q&A, but to really facilitate a discussion at the event. So, I think probably what was most important to us is having events that enable relationship building. So we've learned over time to do both. Okay. All right. I see there's a couple of comments in chat. Come to those in a bit. So this is related to what we just talked about. Share knowledge freely. So I'm still learning. I will probably continue to learn until the day I die. So I've kind of become known as, and there's a couple other people on our committee who also are very knowledgeable. So kind of become known as, I refer to myself as knowledgeable but learning. So we do inform and educate at every opportunity that we can, but not too much. Keep it simple. This is something that I have had to learn, because honestly, I could talk about this stuff in great detail all day long. At some point, pretty quickly, people's eyes start to cross. So it's really thinking about, what is that balance? So if any of you are educators, you probably know this already, but for those of us who are involved in conservation efforts, who don't teach, and are really passionate about what we do, it's easy to share too much, talk too much. These are just a couple of examples of what we do make available for our neighbors. We do have 3 pages on our central Craneridge website. Also, we have a private Facebook group. It's just a really easy way to post information quickly. I don't have to think too much about updating a web page. The other thing that that a couple of us on the committee has started to do is informal learn with neighbors. So what happens is, and I just did one of these a week ago. So a neighbor contacts me and says, hey, I want to know what are the best trees to plant like along our creek, like pretty much full to partial shade. So I've had someone who said, hey, I think I have jumping worms and back by my shed, So what I'll do, a number of these examples, what I'll do is I'll say, let me come take a look. Let me come, let's walk your property together. And I'll tell people, I'm just learning. I'm still learning. I know maybe a little bit more, but let's kind of take a walk together and see what you have. And then I'll come back and do research, reach out, if it's a question about invasives, I'll contact my friends at PRISM. This has been great for building awareness, knowledge and understanding, and building relationships. By the way, I love to do these. This is just a really, really good way to kind of get out and learn, learn with our neighbors. This is lesson learned number 6. So this was kind of interesting how this evolved. So what you see here in this picture is we're in the process of planting 40, not just in this area, but around the neighborhood, 40 native shrubs. This was to replace a number of places where we pulled out bush honeysuckle, multiflora rose, mugwort, and a few other things. So in this general area, we also built, not here, but kind of on the other end of this area, we built an arboretum, a wooded area. We planned a path. This is all on common property. So some members in our committee said, hey, it's common property, we can do whatever we want. And I said, you know, this path is going to come really close behind some of these people's houses. So I said, before we do anything, you know, I really think, you know, we need to talk to some of the neighbors. So before we did anything, and now I insist on this as the chair of the committee, before we do anything, even as part of the planning process, we will involve as many community members as we possibly can. We'll listen, and then we do adjust plans if appropriate. And sometimes it's a negotiation, even on common property. So real good example here with the path that I mentioned is there is a row of about 5 or 6 houses where the path would kind of come behind their backyards, not on their property, but behind their backyards. Some of the neighbors, when they learned about what we wanted to do through this, they was like, well, you'll bring more people behind my house, and I lived here for 40 years and I value the privacy, and what are you doing, and yeah, blah, blah, blah. So one-on-one, we met with these people and had conversations. So finally it came down to, what would you accept? What would work for you? And then we adjusted the path. So we moved the path in. And everyone's been fine with that. So, you know, do whatever, right? But really listen to members of your community first. Okay, I'm not going to read this to you. You'll be able to view this via the video. You know, I can send it I'd be happy to send it as a PDF. Not only did we pull together a group of really cool, energized people, we did accomplish a lot in the past 2 years. And I am so, so proud of my neighbors and what we have done. So this just basically highlights kind of the bigger stuff that we did. We have even bigger plans for 2023. We're talking about doing a pretty significant reforestation project using a matching grant. So, okay. So before we just open it up for questions and discussion, I just want to talk about this guy on the right. So Sam Lewandowski, young guy. In fact, he and his wife just had a baby girl. I've already committed her to being a member of the Woodlands and Habitat Committee. So, you know, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I like to think I'll be doing it for a long time. So really thinking about the future of our efforts. We want them to live on. Sam is probably going to be the guy. Some funny stories there, but I won't get into it. But also note here, behind Sam and kind of everything else here is a huge pile of bush honeysuckle that we removed that you saw in the earlier picture. So for us, it is a generational thing. It's also aspirational. So, so that's it. So I just really quickly before we open it up for discussion, again, I understand that our community has some aspects to it that are probably not similar to wherever you live. But just think about, are there tips here that might work for your neighborhood. And these are our lessons learned, passing them along to you. So thank you. Open it up for questions and any discussion. I'm also going to check the chat.
Thank you, Gwen. Thanks very much. That was very informative and some really great tips there. I have some questions myself, but I see that Lori put in a question. Have you been able to get any town or county funding or grants or just HOA money for your project?
That's a great question. Yep. So the Homeowners Association is a membership nonprofit organization. However, we are not a charitable nonprofit organization at this point in time. So a lot of the grants are not available to us. There is a New York State DEC Regenerate grant. They're going to be doing their third round this year. It is a matching funds grant that's available for private homeowners. We almost applied for it last year and we didn't, but we are going to do it this year. The amount of money that we spend is surprisingly limited. We do have a budget. It's really only a few $1,000s. A lot of what we do, so what we did with PRISM was no cost. The DEC stewardship plan, no cost. A lot of the neighbors have started to grow their own native perennials from seed. Last year, any perennial plants, not shrubs or trees, that we planted were all grown from seed by our neighbors. So we're saving money there. Yeah, most of it is, there's also been some donations too. Some people who are like, yeah, you know, I'll help pay for that. Does that answer your question? Hello, you guys there?
She said yes, thanks.
Oh, got it.
So there's another question. Colette says, I noticed in several photos that there's a large carpet of ferns on the forest floor. These can prevent regeneration. Perhaps this is an issue on your to-do list.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So because we have such heavy deer pressure, as you know, they typically will not eat ferns. They'll eat everything else. So we absolutely have a fern monoculture in our area. So that was really, really good observation. You are right. So it's not on our to-do list at the moment, but we are aware of it. So great observation.
Mary McNeil mentions that trees for tributaries might be an option for stream bank plantings, a resource.
Yes, and we do take advantage of that as well. Over the past, we didn't last year, but we have in the past. The problem was before last year, we did not have, because we weren't really active yet, we did not have volunteers who would maintain the baby trees. So most often they would, you know, put them in with a tube and then ultimately die. So I think we will come back to trees for tribs in the future. Absolutely, when we know we can take better care of them.
That's a good point. And that brings me to my question, which was, you mentioned you're going to do some reforestation in some places, and you've done some native plantings, and maybe individuals have done native plantings. And given that you aren't permitted to use fencing by HOA rules, how are you protecting the plantings that people do, either individually or as a group, and how do you plan to protect any larger projects?
That's a great question. That's a loaded question. So what we've been doing so far is for tree bare root seedlings, we've been using tree tubes. For the shrubs that we planted in the fall, we put cages around every single one. So we got like 100 feet of 5-foot fencing, cut it to size, so it would plenty of room for the shrubs, and then we basically just staked them in the ground, and then we do have a couple of people who monitor the cages and the tree tubes for anything that's on common property. For the reforestation, so there's been some good discussion within the association board about perhaps we would use, and this is what I'm advocating for, deer exclosure fencing until the reforestation, and we're planning on doing different layers until that area is reestablished. So that would be, or established. So that could be 3 to 5 years later. But we think we can get away with saying it's not permanent. So it's a big concern. We're also looking at a method called mini or micro forests. We're actually going to Mercyhurst College. Some members on the committee, going to Mercyhurst College in Erie next Tuesday. There's a professor there who has planted, it's planting native plants, shrubs, forbs, grasses, very close together, kind of like how they grow naturally in the woods. So we're going to go and check that out and see what they did. For those of you in Western New York, if you're familiar with Tift Nature Preserve, they have a very large, much bigger than we would do, fenced in area where they've done some wonderful native reforestation planting work. So we're going to be meeting with Zach Goodrich in 2 weeks. So he's the preserve manager there. Just talk about, process, so on and so forth. So the fencing, we're going to figure something out. My belief is that there's 2 options. Either you do nothing or you try something. So we all are trying to do something. But there are some hurdles. There's just no doubt about it. So great question.
Thank you. No, I was just curious, what you had tried and what was working, because you did, do some native plantings, and given the barriers that you have, what were you gonna, what were your plans to try to overcome those?
Yeah. The cages seem to be working. I like the cages better than the tubes. I've also learned that the trees and bushes. So I think we would now move to cages for trees as well, because the trees just grow stronger. So we're still learning, but yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question if there are any.
Gwen, this is Steve Kinney.
Hi, Steve.
I got a question. We know when you first mentioned about the old Woodlands Committee, you said they were cutting dead and high-risk trees. And of course, immediately I thought, well, if you want diversity, probably a good idea to leave some snags, and some things go running through my mind. And basically, kind of comes down to that, the messy is best, as far as diversity. And I'm just wondering what kind of a conflict you may have between those common areas where you want to be more messy, if you will, to encourage wildlife, and the people's natural tendency to want a well-manicured lawn or maintained lawn.
Yeah, Steve, that's really a terrific question. So part of what we've been doing with education and some of our communications is telling people why messy is better. So there was I think it was a beech tree, really, really large beech tree in a highly visible area. Over the winter, the top half just, blew over. And so some people said, hey, it looks kind of unsightly. And we're like, nope, nope, nope. That's our new woodpecker tree. So common areas here can be very wooded and natural, and the association does not have the funds to clean it all up. And then I think over many years, it's just been, we do live here because we like the natural surroundings. However, we do have people that have a extremely well manicured lawn with no natives. But it's like, we're not mandating people to do what we want them to do. It's just like, learn about it and then you make a choice. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious source of conflict potentially between the two, and I'm just wondering how you were handling it.
Yeah, it's going to be an ongoing thing, to be honest with you, because so we have removed dead trees and enormous amounts of invasive shrubs, which we just let basically dry out completely on a big tarp. And then I think we moved them to kind of like a secluded area where hopefully they will not do anything except be dead. Yeah, it's like, when we do remove things, what do we do with that debris? So, some of our common areas are pretty visible. So it's trying to find that balance. So there's a philosophy out there that when you go native, make sure that anything that is visible looks cared for. I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, and we're trying to find that balance. So if it's viewable by the street and potential homeowners, we probably are not going to go with messy because we do want to maintain the value of our homes here. So it is a struggle trying to find that balance, and we're still working through it. But yeah, I think that's a very fair question that you ask.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much, Gwen. Thank you for taking the time to put this together. And it looks like you've got a great group working there. And I think it's offers some really good ideas. It actually had me thinking of a couple ideas for another project that I'm working on. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining tonight. And we don't have anybody on deck for the next few months. So if anyone wants to volunteer to do another presentation sometime this late spring or early summer, please let me know.